something special. For the ones who watch this video all the way through, there's going to be a question at the end of the video. And I want you to answer that question. Now, don't answer in the comments. My email is on my YouTube channel in the About section. You email me the correct answer and we'll do something special. Alright? So watch all the way to the end. From Country Diggers here. Today I'm going to do a history on Jenny Lind. Not really the bottle, but the person, Jenny Lind. This is a 1930s reproduction, and I did go over it with a marker so I could see the embossing better, but it's a reproduction from Fislerville Glassworks. And I will be showing pictures of the bottles too, but this is mainly about the person, Jenny Lind. Hope y'all enjoy. All right. Johanna Maria Jenny Lind, October 6, 1820, November 2nd, 1887, was a Swedish opera singer, often called the Swedish Nightingale, one of the most highly regarded singers of the 19th century. She performed in soprano roles in opera in Sweden and across Europe, and undertook an extraordinarily popular concert tour of the United States, beginning in 1850. She was a member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Music from 1840. Lind became famous after her performance in Der Fritz in Sweden in 1838. Within a few years, she had suffered vocal damage. But the singing teacher, Manuela Garcia, saved her voice. She was in great demand in opera roles throughout Sweden and Northern Europe in the 1840s, and was closely associated with Felix Mendelssohn. After 2 acclaimed seasons in London, she announced her retirement from opera at the age of 29. In 1850, Lind went to America at the invitation of the showman P.T. Barnum. She gave 93 large-scale concerts for him, then continued to tour under her own management. She earned more than $350,000, equivalent to $12,311,600 $12,311,600 in 2022. Okay. From these concerts, donating the proceeds to charity, principally the endowment of free schools in Sweden. With her new husband, Otto Goldsmith, she returned to Europe in 1852, where she had 3 children and gave occasional concerts over the next 3 decades, settling in England in 1855. From 1882, for some years, she was a professor of singing at the Royal College of Music in London. Born in Klara in central Stockholm, Sweden, Lind was the illegitimate daughter of Nicholas Jones Lind, 1798 to 1858, a bookkeeper, and Anne Marie Felborg, 1793 to 1856, a school teacher. Lind's mother had divorced her first husband for adultery, but refused to remarry until after his death in 1834. Lynn's parents married when she was 14. Lynn's mother ran a day school for girls out of her home. When Lynn was about 9, her singing was overheard by the maid of Mademoiselle Lundberg, the principal dancer at the Royal Swedish Opera. The maid, astonished by Lynn's extraordinary voice, returned the next day with Lundberg, who arranged an audition and helped her gain admission to the Royal Dramatic Training Academy, the acting school of the Royal Dramatic Theatre, where she studied with Carl Magnus Craelis, the singing master at the theater. Lynn began to sing on stage when she was 10. She had a vocal crisis at the age of 12 and had to stop singing for a time, but she recovered. Her first great role was Agatha in Weber's Der Furchtschulz in 1838 at the Royal Swedish Opera. At 20, she was a member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Music and court singer to the King of Sweden and Norway. Her voice became seriously damaged by overuse and untrained singing technique, but her career was saved by the singing teacher Manuel Garcia, with whom she studied in Paris from 1841 to 1843. He insisted that she should not sing at all for 3 months to allow her vocal cords to recover before he started to teach her a healthy and secure vocal technique. After Lynn had been with Garcia for a year, the composer Giacomo Meyerbeer, an early and faithful admirer of her talent, arranged an audition for her at the opera in Paris, but she was rejected. The biographer Francis Rogers concludes that Lynn strongly resented the rebuff. When she became an international star, she always refused invitations to sing at the Paris Opera. Lynn returned to the Royal Swedish Opera, greatly improved as a singer by Garcia's training. She toured Denmark, where in 1843 Hans Christian Andersen met and fell in love with her. Although the two became good friends, she did not reciprocate his romantic feelings. She is believed to have inspired 3 of his fairy tales. Beneath the Pillar, The Angel, and The Nightingale, he wrote, "No book or personality whatever has exerted a more emboldening influence on me as a poet than Jenny Lind. For me, she opened the sanctuary of art." The biographer Carl Rosen believes after Lind rejected Andersen as a suitor, he portrayed her as the Snow Queen with a heart of ice. German and British success. In December 1844, through Meyerbeer's influence, Lind was engaged to sing the title role in Bellini's opera Norma in Berlin. That led to more engagements in opera houses throughout Germany and Austria. But such was her success in Berlin that she continued there for 4 months before she left for other cities. Among her early admirers were Robert Schumann, Hector Berlioz, and most importantly for her, Felix Mendoza. I'm sorry I'm not saying these words right, but somebody wrote, "Jenny Lind has fairly enchanted me. Her song with 2 concentrate flutes is perhaps the most incredible feat in the way of brava singing. that can possibly be heard. That number from Meyerbeer's The Camp of Celsa, 1844, a role written for Lynn, but not premiered by her, became one of the songs most associated with Lynn. And she was called on to sing it whenever she performed in concert. Her operatic repertoire included the title roles in Norma and La Vestibule, as well as Susanna in The Marriage of Figaro, Adana in Lesser and More. I can't say these foreign words. And Alice in Robert le Dabal. About that time, she became known as the Swedish Nightingale. In December 1845, the day after her debut at the Leipzig something or other, under the baton of Mendoza, she sang without fee for a charity concert in aid of the orchestra's Widows Fund. Her devotion and generosity to charitable causes remained a key aspect of her career and greatly enhanced her international popularity, even among the unmusical. At the Royal Swedish Opera, Lynn had been friends with the tenor Julius Gunther. They sang together both in opera and on the concert stage, and became romantically linked by 1844. Their schedules separated them, however, as Gunther remained in Stockholm and then became a student of Garcia in Paris in 1846 and 1847. After reuniting in Sweden, according to Lynn's 1891 memoir, they became engaged to be married in the spring of 1848, just before Lynn returned to England. However, the two broke off the engagement in October of the same year. After a successful season in Vienna, where she was mobbed by admirers and feted by the imperial family, Lynn traveled to London and gave her first appearance there on May the 4th, 1847, when she appeared in an Italian version of Meyerbeer's Robert de Diable. It was attended by Queen Victoria. The next day, the Times wrote, "We have had frequent experience of the excitement appertaining to first nights, but we may safely say, and our opinion will be backed by several hundred of Her Majesty's subjects, that we never witnessed such a scene of enthusiasm as they displayed last night on the occasion of Mademoiselle Jeannie Lynn's debut as Alice in an Italian version of Robert le Dabal." Queen Victoria attended each of Lynn's 16 debut performances in London. In July 1847, Lynn starred in the world premiere of Verdi's opera at Her Majesty's Theatre under the baton of the composer. During her 2 years on the operatic stage in London, Lynn appeared in most of the standard opera repertory. In early 1849, still in her 20s, Lynn announced her permanent retirement from opera. Her last opera appearance was on May 10, 1849, in Robert le Dabal. Queen Victoria and other members of the royal family were present. Lynn's biographer, Francis Rogers, wrote, "The reasons for her early retirement have been much discussed for nearly a century, but remain today a matter of mystery. Many possible explanations have been advanced, but not one of them has been verified. In London, Lynn's close friendship with Mendel Sage, it's MENDELSSOHN, okay, continued. Her friendship with him continued. There have been claims that their relationship was more than friendship. In 2013, George Biddlecombe confirmed in the Journal of the Royal Musical Association that the committee of the Mendelsohn Scholarship Foundation possesses material indicating that Mendelssohn wrote passionate love letters to Lynn, entreating her to join him in an adulterous relationship and threatening suicide as a means of exerting pressure upon her, and that those letters were destroyed on being discovered after her death. Mendelssohn was present at Lynn's London debut in Robert Lee Daboll, and his friend, the critic Henry Corley, who was with him, wrote, "I see as I write the smile with which Mendelssohn, whose enjoyment of Mademoiselle Lynn's talent was unlimited, turned round and looked at me as if a load of anxiety had been taken off his mind. His attachment to Mademoiselle Lynn's genius as a singer was unbounded, as was his desire for her success. Mendelssohn worked with Lynn on many occasions and wrote the beginnings of an opera, Lorelei, for her based on the legend of the Lorelei Rhine maidens. The opera was unfinished at his death. He composed the soprano in his oratorio Elijah, Hear Ye Israel, with Lynn's voice in mind, focusing the tessitura of the, is focusing, I guess, his voice on the F sharp, a note in her range that Mendelssohn supposedly found irresistibly charming. 4 months after her London debut, she was devastated by the premature death of Mendelssohn in November 1847. She did not at first feel able to sing the soprano part in Elijah, which he had written for her. She did finally so at a performance in London's Exeter Hall in late 1848, which raised £1,000 to fund a musical scholarship as a memorial to him. It was her first appearance in oratorio. The original intention had been to found a school of music in Mendelssohn's name in Leipzig, wherever that is. Okay. But there was not enough support there, and with the help of Sir George Smart, Julius Benedict, and others, Lynn eventually raised enough money to fund a scholarship, to receive pupils of all nations and prompt their musical training. The first recipient of the Mendelssohn Scholarship was the 14-year-old Arthur Sullivan, whom Lynn encouraged in his career. Now, the American tour. In 1849, Lynn was approached by the American showman P.T. Barnum with a proposal to tour throughout the United States, giving 150 concerts in 18 months, realizing that it would yield large sums for charity, particularly the endowment of free schools in her native Sweden. Lynn demanded a fixed fee of $1,000 per concert, and in January 1815, Barnum agreed. Together with a supporting baritone, Giovanni Bellotti, and her London colleague, Julius Benedict, as pianist, arranger, and conductor, Lynn sailed to America in September 1850. Barnum's advanced publicity made her a celebrity even before she arrived in the U.S., and she received a wild reception on arriving in New York. Tickets for some of her concerts were in such demand that Barnum sold them by auction. The enthusiasm of the public was so strong that the American press coined the term Lynn Mania. After her first two performances in New York in September 1850, Lynn's party toured the east coast of America with continued success, and later took in Cuba, the southern U.S., and Canada. By early 1851, Lynn became uncomfortable with Barnum's relentless marketing of the tour, and she invoked a contractual right to sever her ties with him. They parted amicably. Whatever. She continued the tour for nearly a year under her own management until May 1852. Benedict left the party in 1851 to return to England, and Lynn invited Otto Goldsmith to replace him as pianist and conductor. Lynn and Goldsmith were married on February 5th, 1852. Near the end of the tour in Boston, she took the name Jenny Lynn Goldsmith, both privately and professionally. Details of the later concerts under her own management are scarce, but it is known that under Barnum's management, Lynn gave 93 concerts in America for which she earned about $350,000, and he netted at least $5,000. $10.9 million and $15.6 million as of 2021, respectively. She donated her profits to various charities, including free schools in Sweden and some U.S. charities. The tour is a plot point in the 1980 musical Barnum and the 2017 film The Greatest Showman, both of which include a fictionalized relationship between Lynn and Barnum with romantic undertones. Fictionalized, remember, that's Hollywood for you. All right. At the time of her tour, the debate over slavery in the United States had been intensified by the Compromise of 1850. American abolitionists attempted to secure Lynn's support for their cause, but she refused to comment on the institution. After meeting Lynn in July 1851, British abolitionist Judith Griffiths wrote that the colored people are regarded by her as beneath humanity and too unworthy to be educated. She seemed horrified at colored people. I now know for myself that she is thoroughly pro-slavery. I am so grieved. Abolitionist lawyer Monswell Field wrote that she had an abhorrence for Negroes she could not overcome. They are so ugly, she used to say. Yet in June 1852, Lynn donated $100 to Harriet Beecher Stowe to free the Edmondsons a black family enslaved in Washington, D.C., praising Uncle Tom's Cabin as having been a strong means in the Creator's hand of operating essential good in one of the most important questions for the welfare of our black brethren. Historian Joan D. Hedrick suggested that Stowe's book may have changed Lynn's heart. Later years. Lynn and Goldsmith returned to Europe together in May 1852. They lived first in Dresden, Germany, and from 1855 in England for the rest of their lives. They had 3 children. Otto, born September 1853 in Germany. Lynn, born March 1857 in England. Oh, wait a minute. Jenny, born in 1857 in England, and Ernest, born January 1861 in England. Okay. Although she refused all requests to appear in opera after her return to Europe, Lynn continued to perform in the concert hall. In 1856, at the invitation of the Philharmonic Society conducted by William Sterndale Bennett, she sang the chief soprano part in the first English performance of the Cantina Paradise and the Peri by Robert Schumann. In 1866, she gave a concert with Arthur Sullivan at St. James Hall. The Times reported, "There is magic still in that voice, the most perfect singing, perfect alike in expression and in vocalization. Nothing more engaging, nothing more earnest, nothing more dramatic can be imagined." At Dusseldorf in January 1870, she sang in Ruth, an oratorio composed by her husband. When Goldsmith formed the Bach Choir in 1875, Lynn trained the soprano choristers for the first English performance of Bach's B minor Mass in April 1876 and performed in the Mass. Her concerts decreased in frequency until she retired from singing in 1883. From 1879 until 1887, Lynn worked with Frederick Nix on his biography of Frederick Chopin. In 1882, she was appointed professor of singing at the newly founded Royal College of Music. She believed in all-around musical training for her pupils, insisting that in addition to their vocal studies, they were instructed in solfege, piano harmony, dictation, deportment, and at least one foreign language. Her students included German singer and composer Georgiana Sherbert. She lived her final years at Winds Point, Hertfordshire, on the Malvern Hills near the British camp. Her last public appearance was at a charity concert at the Royal Malvern Spa in 1883. She died at 67 at Winds Point on November 2nd, 1887, and was buried in the Great Malvern Cemetery to the music of Chopin's funeral march. She bequeathed a considerable part of her wealth to help poor Protestant students in Sweden receive an education. There are no known surviving recordings of Lynn's voice. She is believed to have made an early phonograph recording for Thomas Edison, but in the words of the critic Philip L. Miller, even had the fabled Edison cylinder survived, it would have been too primitive, and she too long retired to tell us much. The biographer Francis Rogers concludes that although Lynn was much admired by Meyerbeer, Mendelssohn, the Schultzmans, Berlioz, and others, in voice and in dramatic talent, she was undoubtedly inferior to her predecessors, Malibran and Pasta, and to her contemporaries Sontag and Grizzly. He notes that because of her expert promoters, including Barnum, almost all that was written about her was undoubtedly biased by an almost overwhelmingly propaganda in her favor, bought and paid for. Rogers says of Mendelssohn and Lynn's other admirers that their tastes were essentially Teutonic, and except for Meyerbeer, they were not expert in Italian opera. Lynn's early specialty, he quotes, Italian opera, Lynn's early specialty. He quotes a critic of the New York Herald who also noted little deficiencies in execution in ascending the scale, which even enthusiasm cannot deprive of her sharpness. The American press agreed that Lynn's presentation was more typical of Germanic, cold, untouching, icy purity of tone and style, rather than the passionate expression necessary for Italian opera. And the Herald wrote that her style was suited to please the people of our cold climate. She will have triumphs here that would never attend her progress through France or Italy. The critic H.F. Corley, who admired Lynn, described her voice as having 2 octaves in compass from D to D, having a higher possible note or two, available on rare occasions, and that the lower half of the register and the upper one were of 2 distinct qualities. The former was not strong, veiled if not husky, and apt to be out of tune. The latter was rich, brilliant, and powerful, finest in the highest proportions. Corley praised her breath management, her use of some piasmo, and her taste in ornament and her intelligent use of technique to conceal the differences between her upper and lower registers. He thought her execution was great, and that she was a skilled and careful musician, but felt that many of her effects on the stage appeared overcalculated, and that singing in foreign languages impeded her ability to give expression to the text. He felt that her concert singing was more admirable than her operatic performances, but he praised some of her roles. Corley judged her finest work to be in the German repertoire, citing Mozart, Haydn, and Mendelssohn's Elijah as best suited to her. Miller concluded that although connoisseurs of the voice preferred other singers, her wider appeal to the public at large was not merely a legend created by Barnum, but was a mixture of a uniquely pure and some called it celestial quality in her voice, consistent with her well-known generosity and charity. Lynn is commemorated in Poets' Corner, Westminster Abbey, London, under the name Jenny Lynn Goldsmith. Among those present at the memorial's unveiling ceremony on April 20th, 1894, were Goldsmith's members of the royal family Sullivan, Sir George Grove and representatives of some of the charities supported by Lind. There is also a plaque commemorating Lind in the Bolton's Kingston, London, and a blue plaque at 189 Old Brompton Road, London, Southwest 7, which was erected in 1909. Lind has been commemorated in music, on screen, and even on banknotes. Both the 1996 and 2006 issues of the Swedish krona banknote bear a portrait of Lind on the front. Many artistic works have honored or featured her. Anton Wallerstein composed the Jenny Lind polka around 1850. In the 1930 Hollywood film A Lady's Morals, Grace Moore starred as Lind with Wallace Beery as Barnum. The Swedish opera singer Helga Gorlund portrayed Lind in the 1937 Swedish historical film John Eriksson, Victor of Hampton Roads. In 1941, Elise Warner starred as Lind in the German language musical biography film The Swedish Nightingale. In 2001, a semi-biographical film, Hans Christian Andersen, My Life as a Fairy Tale, featured Flora Montgomery as Lind. 2005, Elvis Costello announced that he was writing an opera about Lind called The Secret Heirs, with some lyrics by Anderson. 2010, BBC television documentary Choplin, The Woman Behind the Music, includes discussions of Choplin's last years during which Lind so affected the composer. All right, since this is so long a video, those that watch to the end, I'm going to have a question for you, and whoever answers that question correctly will write it down, and I'll pick a winner. We'll have a giveaway, and I'll pick a winner. All right? Don't know what I'll give away, but I'll give away something. All right? So, I'll tell you the question at the end of the video. All right. Where was I? Oh, many places and objects have been named for Lind, including Jenny Lind Island in Canada, the Jenny Lind locomotive, and a clipper ship. The USS Nightingale, an Australian schooner, was named Jenny Lind in her honor in 1857. It was wrecked in a creek on Queensland coast. The creek was accordingly named Jenny Lind Creek. A bronze statue of a seated Jenny Lind by Eric Raphael Radberg, dedicated in 1924, sits in the Framus section of Djurgården Island in Stockholm. In Britain, Goldsmith's endowment of an infirmary for children in the honor of Norwich is perpetrated in its present form as the Jenny Lind Children's Hospital of the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospital. There is Jenny Lind Park in the same city. A chapel is named for Lind at the University of Worcester City campus. A hotel and a pub is named after her in the old town of Hastings, East Sussex. Hereford County Hospital has a psychiatric ward named for Jenny Lind. A district in Glasgow is named after her. In Sutton, London, the pub, the Jenny Lind, next to Lind Road, has been renamed the Nightingale. In the U.S., Lind is commemorated by street names in Amelia, Ohio, Fort Smith, Arkansas, New Bedford, Massachusetts, Taunton, Massachusetts, McKeesport, Pennsylvania, Northeastern Massachusetts, North Highlands, California, and Stanhope, New Jersey, and in the name of Jenny Lind, Arkansas. The name of Jenny Lind, California is likely named after her, although there are several tales about the naming. An elementary school in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the Jenny Lind Tower, a stone tower in North Truro, Massachusetts, are named for her. She visited the Mammoth Cave in central Kentucky in 1851, and a feature in the cave was named in her honor called Jenny Lind's Armchair. Cottage-style spindle furniture is still named for her, especially Jenny Lind cribs and beds. And Dover, Illinois has the Jenny Lind Chapel, a Swedish Lutheran chapel that Lind donated $1,500 to construct. The Jenny Lind wing is part of a student residence building at Augustana College, Rock Island, Illinois, which was founded by the Swedish Evangelical Lutheran Augustana Synagogue in North America in 1860. The college also named a Jenny Lind vocal ensemble. Jenny Lind Soup is a soup named for her. The American Swedish Historical Museum's Jenny Lind Room is devoted to her and the lasting effects of the widespread popularity in America. Her 1850 to 1852 tour of America is a plot point in the 1980 musical Barnum and the 2017 film The Greatest Showman, both of which include a fictionalized relationship between Lind and Barnum with romantic undertones. Okay, Norwegian air shuttles Boeing 737 AJP registration LN-DYG is called Jenny Lind and has a drawing of Lind on its tail. All right, hope y'all enjoyed, but the question is right here. What did Chaplin call Jenny Lind in the 2000 BBC documentary? What did Chaplin call Jenny Lind? Whoever answers that correctly, go to my YouTube channel on my About page and email me the correct answer.